The late afternoon sun bathed the city park in a golden glow, casting long shadows across the walking paths. Children laughed as they played on the jungle gym. Couples strolled hand in hand, and joggers moved to the steady rhythm of their music. Dogs of all shapes and sizes ran across the open field, tails wagging, tongues lolling happily in the warm breeze. But amid the peaceful scene, something disturbing was about to unfold. Something that would turn a quiet day in the park into an unforgettable lesson in justice. Before we dive deeper into this gripping and emotional story, let us know where you're watching from today. And if tales of courage, action, and standing up for what's right inspire you, don't forget to subscribe to Story Dash. Soon, we'll share another story that will leave you speechless. Near a secluded bench, a young man in his early 20s leaned against a lamppost, flipping a cigarette between his fingers. His leather jacket and ripped jeans gave him the look of someone who didn't care about much, except causing trouble. His eyes darted around, looking for amusement, and soon, his attention landed on an elderly man walking a small, fluffy Pomeranian. A smirk spread across the punk's face. With deliberate steps, he sauntered toward the unsuspecting dog and its owner. Then, without warning, he swung his foot forward and kicked the tiny dog with a cruel force. The little pup yelped in pain, tumbling onto the pavement as the old man gasped, his frail hands shaking. The park froze. Nearby, people turned their heads, shocked, but no one moved. The punk laughed, shaking his head. "What a useless little rat," he sneered. "Shouldn't be in my way." The elderly man dropped to his knees, scooping the trembling dog into his arms. His voice wavered with disbelief. Why would you do that?" But the punk just shrugged and took another step forward, as if daring the old man to say something more. That's when a deep, calm voice cut through the tension like a blade. "You just made a very, very big mistake." The punk turned, rolling his eyes. "Oh yeah? And who's going to do something about it?" The voice belonged to Jason Statham. Standing just a few feet away, dressed casually in a dark hoodie and jeans, Jason's sharp eyes locked onto the punk with a stare so cold it could freeze fire. For a moment, the young man hesitated. Something about Jason's presence made his stomach twist in a way he didn't like, but arrogance was a powerful thing. "Oh, I get it," the punk scoffed. "You one of those animal lovers?" He chuckled darkly, stepping toward Jason. "Look, old man, if you got something to say, spit it out. Otherwise, mind your own." Jason was already moving. Before the punk could finish his sentence, Jason grabbed him by the jacket and spun him around, slamming him against the nearby lamppost with enough force to rattle the metal. The young man's cocky smirk disappeared instantly, replaced by shock and the first hints of fear. Jason leaned in, his voice calm, deliberate, but terrifyingly cold. "You kicked my dog." The punk blinked, struggling to process the words. What?" Jason's grip tightened. "That little dog you just kicked? That's mine." The realization hit like a brick. All color drained from the punk's face as his gaze flickered to the Pomeranian, still shaking in the old man's arms. His mouth opened, then closed again, searching for a response that wouldn't end with him in the hospital. Jason gave him no such opportunity. "Let me explain something to you," Jason continued, his voice dangerously low. "That dog? She's been with me through everything. She's family. You just kicked her like she was nothing. So, tell me, what do you think I should do to you?" The punk swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling like dry paper. I didn't know, man. I didn't..." Jason pressed him harder against the pole. "You didn't know?" His voice dripped with contempt. "Didn't know? And what if that had been someone else's dog? Some kids? You think this is a joke?" By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching in stunned silence. Some people had their phones out, recording the scene, while others whispered to each other, recognizing the famous action star. Jason slowly let go, but the message had been delivered. The punk stumbled back, his legs shaking. Just as the punk thought the nightmare was over, Jason took another slow step forward, his gaze dark and unreadable. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone made the punk shrink back. "Tell me something," Jason said, voice like gravel. "What goes through your head before you hurt something smaller than you?" The punk stammered, but Jason wasn't looking for an answer. "I've met guys like you before. You start small. A dog, a cat. Maybe next time it's a person, a woman, a kid. You do this because you think no one's gonna stop you." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But someone always stops you. And today, that someone is me." "Here's what's going to happen," Jason said, his voice eerily calm. "You're going to apologize. To the dog." The punk blinked. To the dog?" Jason stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "You heard me." Shame burned in the punk's chest as he turned toward the old man who still held the tiny Pomeranian in his arms. The pup whimpered slightly, clearly frightened but safe. I'm sorry," the punk muttered, barely above a whisper. Jason's head tilted slightly. "Louder." "I'm sorry," the punk nearly shouted. The old man didn't say anything. He simply hugged his dog a little tighter. Jason took one last step forward, towering over the punk. "Now, get out of my sight." The young man didn't need to be told twice. He turned and bolted out of the park, disappearing into the streets. A few moments of silence followed. Then a sudden wave of applause erupted from the bystanders. A woman nearby, holding a Labrador on a leash, laughed. "Now that's justice." Jason ignored the attention and turned to the elderly man. "You okay?" The man nodded, his eyes still wet with emotion. "Thank you, son. I didn't know what to do." Jason gently reached out and stroked his Pomeranian's head, his expression softening. "No one touches my dog," he said simply. The old man smiled. "She's lucky to have you." Jason chuckled. "I'm lucky to have her." With one last nod, Jason turned and walked away, his dog trotting happily beside him as if nothing had ever happened. The park slowly returned to normal, but for the people who had witnessed the moment, they would never forget what they had seen. Jason Statham, an action hero both on and off the screen, and for one punk who thought he could get away with hurting an innocent animal, he learned a lesson he would never forget. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have stepped in or looked the other way? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Story Dash for more unforgettable stories like this one. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in a cape. It comes in a leather jacket and a death stare.